Wait.
Alright, here's another problem. Secant of 300 degrees is what?
I got it, Mr. Dwyer.
The secant of 300, here's 300 down here on my unit circle, and the secant, it's kind of cut off, but it's the square root of 3 over 2 is the sine, 1/2 is the cosine. So the reciprocal of 1/2 is just what? 2, so your answer is just 2. Don't make it more complicated than it has to be. Let's try another one. We're doing this from the review packet, chapter 13, from the Honors Algebra 2 Trig. So the cosine, let's do D. Deal. D says
cotangent of 180.
Cotangent of 180. So let's look at 180, which is over here. Cotangent is cosine over sine, and your cosine is the x, your sine is the y. So it's -1 over 0, which is undefined.
Would this be an acceptable amount of
Undefined. Problem. Let's try number, which one are we doing?
I missed
Let's try letter G.
Cotangent is cosine over sine.
What's the arcsine? Now, does your teacher, when they put a capital A, does that mean anything? Some books, the capital A means...
Besides, like, error in 5th grade?
No, so for some books, some textbooks, the capital A means, like, only go one revolution around the circle, or go continually. Different books do it differently, so just to be aware, you might want to find out, check the answer key, but let's just assume that it means just give me one solution. So what's the arcsine of negative root 3 over 2? Remember, arcsine is defined here. Arcsine is defined from negative pi to positive pi, or negative 90 to positive 90. So what angle has the sine of negative root 3 over 2? Negative root 3 over 2, that was this one right there. The sine is the y value. So what angle? Now it's not 300, because it's, you have to go this direction, and so it's negative 60 degrees. So this is negative 60 degrees. Here's another one, cosine inverse of cosine of 3 pi over 4. So this right here is an angle. What's the, I'm sorry, that's not an angle. That's not an angle, that's a ratio. That's a ratio, and then this is asking what angle has that ratio as its cosine. So if I did like this, notice how the cosine inverse and cosine are inverse functions of each other. Whenever I do a function and its inverse, what happens? What's the whole point of an inverse?
To get
the opposite.
It's taking the opposite. So if I take a number, let's say 5, and I multiply it by 3, and then I multiply that by its inverse, I'm going to get back to 5. In other words, it doesn't do anything. If I square x, and then square root x, and then I square it, which is the inverse, what happens to it? I just get x. It undoes it. Alright, here's the caveat with this. The caveat is that cosine inverse is only defined in a specified domain. So you have to be really careful. Now in this case, so in other words, is the answer, you might think, oh, the answer is just 3 pi over 4. But that is true as long as 3 pi over 4 is inside the cosine of the range of the cosine inverse. And is it?
It isn't.
Where's 3 pi over 4?
Oh wait, yes it is, never mind.
3 pi over 4 is right there. Is that within, remember the range? Am I thinking range or domain?
Domain. Range.
I'm thinking range.
Smart guy.
Am I thinking range or am I thinking domain? I'm plugging in.
Range, I think.
I'm thinking range, yeah. Is it within the range? Because the domain is you can plug anything into it, but your answer has to be in this range right here. So 3 pi over 4?
Yes.
It sure is. Now what if I had said this? What if I said 4 pi over 3? Let me change this and make this a much harder question. If I said this, now the problem is this angle right here, the cosine of 4 pi over 3 is, I'm sorry, not the angle, the value is negative 1/2. That's negative 1/2. What's the cosine inverse of negative 1/2? I can't say 4 pi over 3 because that's not within the range of my cosine inverse function. I have to look back here and I say, well, what angle in this range from 0 to 180, which angle, or from 0 to pi, which angle has the cosine of negative 1/2? And that answer is right up there. So it's going to be 2 pi over 3. So your answer is not 4 pi over 3 as you would think. It's 2 pi over 3 because 2 pi over 3 and 4 pi over 3 both have the same cosine, namely negative 1/2. But 2 pi over 3 is between 0 and pi radians, which is inside the range of that function. Get it? So that was a long way of me saying you can't just cancel these things out. That's not how it works. You can't just say, oh, those cancel each other out because they're inverse functions and 4 pi over 3 is the answer, because you're not considering the range. If you do that, you're not properly considering the range of the cosine inverse or sine inverse or whatever it is function.